The leather-clad man with the scarred knuckles sat alone in the corner booth, and the whole diner seemed to hold its breath when he walked in. His motorcycle had been parked outside for 3 minutes before the roar of the engine finally died. And when Marcus stepped through that glass door, the bells chiming above it felt like a death knell to anyone who didn't know his story. They saw a massive biker with a weathered face, dark ink covering every inch of visible skin, and the kind of presence that made small towns nervous. What they didn't see was the broken man carrying the weight of an impossible world on shoulders that had already learned to bear more than any person should. If you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. These stories remind us that everyone deserves grace and compassion. Let's journey into this one together. Marcus had been riding for 16 hours straight, and it showed in every line of his face. His daughter Emma was turning 8 tomorrow, and he had exactly $47 left in his wallet after filling up the gas tank that morning. He'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding his life after rock bottom had turned out to have a basement. Prison time for a crime he'd committed while drowning in addiction, a custody battle he'd lost, a custody battle he'd won back, and now a cross-country drive just to make it to his ex-wife's wedding reception, where Emma would be spending the afternoon. He wasn't invited to the ceremony, but the custody agreement said he could pick Emma up at 5 o'clock, and he'd be damned if he'd miss a single minute with his daughter. The diner was the kind of place that had probably looked the same for 40 years, with red vinyl booths that had seen better days, and a counter lined with stools that wobbled slightly. Faded photographs of local landmarks covered the walls, and behind the counter stood a waitress named Carol, according to her name tag, with tired eyes and a practiced smile that had long ago stopped reaching her face. Marcus ordered eggs, toast, and coffee because it was the cheapest thing on the menu that might keep him going through the drive back home. He was eating mechanically, tasting nothing, thinking about Emma and whether she still remembered that he used to make her laugh by doing voices for her stuffed animals. 3 tables away, a young mother with hollow cheeks and desperate eyes was ordering the same thing. She had a child, too, a girl no more than 6, with matted blonde hair and a dress that had been patched in multiple places. The little girl sat coloring on the back of a placemat with a broken crayon, and Marcus watched as the mother counted out coins from a small purse, sliding them across the table to Carol with hands that trembled slightly. Not from cold, but from something deeper. Something Marcus recognized because he'd worn that look himself during the worst years. The look of someone who was trying so hard but still falling short. Who would have done anything for their child? And still it wasn't enough. Marcus finished his eggs and left $35 on the table for a bill that came to $18. He was standing to leave when he heard the little girl ask her mother if they could go home now. And the mother's response came out strangled, the kind of voice a person uses when they're trying not to cry. The mother was saying they'd spend 1 more hour here because they couldn't go home yet, because it was too cold, and the shelter didn't open until 7. Marcus stopped moving. His leg was halfway out of the booth when those words landed on him like a physical blow. He sat back down. Not because he planned to, but because his body simply gave out under the weight of it. He'd been homeless once, for 3 weeks, before his sister took him in. 3 weeks had felt like 3 years. He couldn't imagine doing it while protecting a child, making sure they were safe and warm, and didn't know that their mother was terrified. He couldn't imagine the mathematics that single mother was doing in her head right now, the same mathematics he'd done. How many more hours of daylight? How many more cups of coffee could she buy to justify sitting in the diner? How many more moments before she had to gather her courage and face another night? Carol came to clear his plate, and Marcus asked her if she could box up something for him. He ordered a full chicken dinner with sides, apple pie, a container of rice, and a quart of milk. He asked her to make it discreet, just box it all up without drawing attention. Carol's face shifted when he asked that, something flickering behind her eyes that suggested she'd seen this move before, or she'd dreamed of someone making it for her once. She nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned with the boxes, Marcus took them and stood slowly. His leather jacket creaked slightly as he moved, and the whole diner seemed to be watching now, aware that something was happening. He walked toward the mother and daughter's table, and he could feel the tension rising like heat. He was a stranger, a dangerous-looking stranger, moving toward a child, and every parent in that diner was calculating whether to intervene. Marcus stopped at their table and set the boxes down gently. The little girl looked up with suspicious eyes, but the mother's face crumpled with immediate understanding and alarm. She started to say no, started to refuse, started to explain that she couldn't accept charity, but Marcus spoke before she could spiral into that particular pain. He told her he'd ordered too much, that his stomach couldn't handle it, that it would just go to waste otherwise. He said it in a voice that didn't invite argument, but he said it in a way that let her keep her dignity. She could pretend to believe him if she needed to. She could tell herself that this was luck, not mercy, and luck was something you accepted from the universe without the crushing weight of gratitude that broke people. The mother's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She reached for the boxes, and her hands were shaking again, but this time it was different. This time it was the shaking of someone who'd been drowning and suddenly felt solid ground beneath their feet. Marcus turned to leave, and that's when he heard the little girl ask her mother what the mean-looking man had done, and the mother answered softly, her voice trembling through her tears, saying he'd shown her that there were still people in the world who saw her daughter, who understood what it meant to be scared and hungry and alone. She said he'd given them dinner and something bigger than that. He'd given them hope. He'd reminded her that kindness still existed, that strangers could be angels, that the world wasn't entirely made of stone. The diner had gone completely silent. Nobody was eating anymore. Nobody was looking at their phones. Everyone was watching this moment. This exchange of food that was really an exchange of humanity, of recognition, of the understanding that we're all one crisis away from crisis, all one bad decision away from catastrophe, all one kind act away from remembering that life might be worth living after all. Marcus walked out to his motorcycle, his throat tight and his vision blurred. He had $37 left and 45 minutes of driving ahead of him to get to Emma. He would make it, and she would be waiting, and her eyes would light up the way they always did when she saw him now, those first years of distance and anger finally starting to fade. He would buy her a birthday dinner that night with those $37, and she would probably order chicken nuggets and ice cream, and he would watch her with the kind of love that had nearly destroyed him and somehow also saved him. But sitting on that motorcycle, in the parking lot of a small-town diner, Marcus made a decision. He was going to pay it forward. Every month on Emma's birthday, he was going to find a family that needed seeing. He was going to save what he could and give what he couldn't keep, because he understood now that this was the real work of redemption. It wasn't about punishing yourself for what you'd done wrong. It was about showing up for others the way he wished someone had shown up for him. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you why kindness matters, if it made you believe that one person can change another person's entire day, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to remember that the world is good. Your engagement means everything to us because it helps us reach more people with these stories of transformation and grace. The sun was setting over the diner, painting everything gold and red, and Marcus sat there for a moment longer, remembering the mother's face, remembering the weight of those boxes of food, remembering what it felt like to be seen by a stranger when you'd almost forgotten what seeing felt like. He started his engine and rode toward his daughter, toward a future that was finally starting to look like something worth surviving for. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below telling us about a time when someone's kindness changed your life, or when you were able to show that kind of grace to someone else. Your stories matter. They inspire others. They prove that we're all connected by these moments of humanity. As Marcus drove through the fading light, he understood something that had eluded him during all those years of running, all those years of drowning, all those years of breaking. He understood that redemption wasn't a destination you arrived at when you'd finally paid enough, hurt enough, suffered enough. Redemption was a direction you traveled in, one act of kindness at a time, one person seen at a time, one moment of choosing love over fear at a time. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.